Headliner Nation, what's going on? Your boy Kyle back with our way too early 2021 fantasy football rankings. And we're going to be talking about running backs today. And I've already dropped wide receivers and quarterbacks. We've got running backs today, and then we'll have tight ends in a couple of days after this. So just kind of going through, what are our thoughts right now? What's kind of going through our head in the thought process of what we're looking for, different bits of information that we kind of have playing through our minds right now. These are not to be taken too serious, because I'm going to tell you right now, these are going to be wrong, not only in probably a couple of months, but definitely by the start of the season. These will not hold up, but it's just, again, way too early rankings to talk about kind of what we're thinking about right now and everything else involved with the running backs for 2021. Now, if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button, stick around, become a part of Headliner Nation today. Let's go ahead and jump into it, though, and talk about our top 30 running backs, starting at number 30, Nyheim Hines. Now, Jonathan Taylor will 100% be the workhorse for the Colts come next season, but they've done a good job of keeping Nyheim Hines in the game plan, finding situations for him, allowing him to work not only at the goal line a little bit and in pass catching situations, but all sorts of situations. So he's not just being limited. I mean, there was even times where he would be out there maybe on first and second down, and it wouldn't necessarily be in a catch-up type atmosphere. He was out there quite a bit, and I like that about him. I like that they put him all over the place. He wasn't just a typical pass-catching back, and he's also a guy that can work out of the slot. I mean, he can go all over the place on the field. He's a very good football player, and glad to see him get a little bit of the work this year. Next year, definitely him and Taylor are going to be a nice little 1-2 punch. Damien Harris should be taking over as the starting running back for the New England Patriots. That's the hope, but it is the Patriots. You never know. James White is a free agent, so he could potentially walk. I think he does land back in New England, but over the last several weeks of the season, Damien Harris proved that he could be the guy. He didn't play at all to begin the season, played in week 4, then comes back in week 6, has a couple of down weeks, and then after that, pretty good double-digit touches, and all of his games after that, the touchdowns weren't really there, but 102 yards, 71 yards, 121 yards, 80 yards. So some decent performances. I mean, 121 yards against Baltimore, 102 yards against Buffalo, who could, it could be eaten up for some yards on the ground, but still, that's a game, in which Buffalo, could have easily handled and walked away with, but New England kept it close, and part of that was the running game with Damien Harris. So Damien Harris should take over next year, and he had 691 rushing yards this year, averaged 5 yards an attempt. Depending on what they end up doing, he's definitely a guy that, if they can play in some close games next year, I don't see why he couldn't be a little bit closer to 1,000 yards if he is the lead back. And again, that's a lot of ifs there, because you never know what's going to happen with the New England Patriots. Number 28, James Conner, also scheduled to be a free agent this year, but only 25 years old. Coming off a season in which he ran for 721 yards and 6 touchdowns. He hasn't come close. He hasn't come close to matching his 2018 season when he took over for Le'Veon Bell. But he's still, over the last couple of years, dealt with some injuries. Hasn't been on the field, and that's been the one thing about James Conner. 13 games, 10 games, and 13 games. He hasn't been able to stay on the field for a full season yet. We would like to see that out of him. I don't know if he's going to re-sign in Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh guy. I mean, he grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. He went to Pitt. He's played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Part of me feels like James Conner is the type of guy that if they were to come to him and offer him a decent contract, he would still stick around. If he does, I think that's good. But I think the days of James Conner being a workhorse running back are done. I think one thing that they will try to do with him moving forward, if he does re-sign in Pittsburgh, is kind of balance that a little bit. Balance it with Benny Snell. Get Anthony McFarland more involved. That's why he probably won't go a whole lot higher for me. Raheem Mostert, a guy that everybody thought was going to be a late round smash addition this year, just couldn't stay healthy. Only played in 8 games this season. Now, when he did play, he played well. in San Francisco, since he's really been a guy that has been getting more and more touches over the last couple of years, 5.6 yards per attempt, 5 yards per attempt. He's always been that guy who's got a little bit of burst with him, but he had to stay on the field for 16 games this year, and he didn't. He only got on the field for 8, but he did start 8 games as well. And every single game but 3 actually, he was well over 4 yards a carry. Again, here's my thing with this backfield right now. Tevin Coleman will obviously be out, but Jeff Wilson will be back next year. Jeff Wilson, as a guy towards the end of the season, was helping keep things moving in that backfield. They like to switch in and out a little bit. So Raheem Mostert, for me, based on his ability to go to the house, his explosiveness to put up big plays, that's why I've got him here towards the back half of my rankings, because he does have that ability when he touches the football. But it was clear by the end of the season that Jeff Wilson was a guy that they wanted to get more involved, especially in the red zone. This past year, he did end up having 7 rushing touchdowns, only 600 rushing yards. So, they kind of split that workload a little bit. Expect it to be kind of the same thing moving forward as well. Raheem Mostert, when he's out there, he'll definitely play, but I wouldn't be expecting huge weeks from him every week, and I would be expecting Wilson to steal some of those red zone touches. Ronald Jones, for the longest time around here, we were hashtag say no to Rojo. This year, I came around a little bit. Jake did not, but Jake has never fancied Ronald Jones. I don't hold him against it. But he did end up almost running for 1,000 yards this season. There towards the end of the year, he just couldn't stay healthy, had an issue. When he came back, they used Leonard Fournette. He was able to get back in week 17. Leonard Fournette still was the starter that week, but Ronald Jones runs for 978 yards, averaged 5.1 yards per attempt. I would imagine after a full healthy offseason, Leonard Fournette, I think he could re-sign there. I think they could bring him back. But if they don't, Ronald Jones will be the starter there once again, and he had some big games. He had 4 games with over 100 yards this past season. Some inconsistent performances. Again, some performances where, they split the workload a little bit. Ronald Jones, if he fumbles or if he has an issue, obviously that could pull him out rather quickly. But he only fumbled the ball twice this year. So something that people have kind of held against him in recent years is his ability not to hold on to the ball. He had 2 fumbles this past season. Didn't quite match his his receptions from last year. Those went down a couple of ticks. But again, we could be absolutely fine moving forward with Ronald Jones. We'll see what happens in 2021. If Leonard Fournette doesn't come back, then Ronald Jones will go forward or go higher in my rankings. David Johnson here, sitting at number 25. I was expecting more out of David Johnson this year, to be honest with you. And honestly, to begin the season, we were getting a pretty decent performance from him. To begin the year, he was getting a decent amount of targets. He was getting the rushing attempts. Ends up finishing with 691 rushing yards this year. Catches another 314 through the air. 8 total touchdowns, which was a little bit of an incline from the season before. But honestly, he just hasn't been himself. He's not the same running back that went for 1,200 yards on the ground and 16 touchdowns, 20 total TDs all the way back in 2016. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, and he's heading into a Houston offense that, might be going into a pretty big rebuild. I don't know if David Johnson's going to be included in that rebuild 100%. They could still use him, but they might be looking for someone to kind of help take over that backfield. Expect decent numbers from him next year if he continues on that same path. Melvin Gordon ending up here at the number 24 spot. I'd like to have Phillip Lindsay a little bit higher, but he is a free agent. Don't know if he'll be back. Melvin Gordon, if he remains the starter, for some reason Phillip Lindsay doesn't come back, then Melvin Gordon's going to shoot a lot higher. The most rushing yards that he's had in a season since 2017, and he still saw a bulk of the carries, 215 rushing attempts this past year, 9 touchdowns. The one thing that was a lot different about this year that we saw in the years past is the receiving game. game. He wasn't nearly as incorporated into the receiving game this year as he has been in years past. 32 receptions is a career low. 158 receiving yards is a career low. His one receiving touchdown was the same as last year when he played more games last year, and the least that he's had since 2015 when he was a rookie. So, the issue here with Melvin Gordon is if Phillip Lindsay re-signs in Denver, then Phillip Lindsay still continues to hold on to the kind of that pass-catching role, that role that they have him there. And again, honestly, you know what? Phillip Lindsay doesn't even catch a whole lot of passes, to be honest with you. So the thing is that maybe they use him in a third down role. I'm misspeaking there, so I want to make sure that I clarify. Not pass-catching role, third down role. Because what Phillip Lindsay can do is he goes out there on third down and he can end up being another target in the passing game, even though he hasn't necessarily seen a lot of targets in recent year or this past season. He only saw 7 receptions this past season, but in 2018 and 2019, he saw 35 and 35 receptions. So each of his first 2 years, he saw 35 receptions. You get him out there in that third down role, but here's the thing. You've got Noah Fant now. You've got Jerry Jeudy. You've got, obviously, Cortland Sutton will be coming back. You've got other more aggressive pass catchers there, guys that can put up bigger plays. And that's why Phillip Lindsay didn't really see that type of, a workload this year. But Melvin Gordon coming off the field on third downs, Phillip Lindsay can go out there. Phillip Lindsay also taking touches away. I would expect Phillip Lindsay to come back and still be a part of that offense, but we'll have to wait and see again what happens with there. So Melvin Gordon falling right here. And again, if something happens, he will end up moving up in my rankings if Phillip Lindsay goes somewhere else. Kareem Hunt at number 23. Who said Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb could not coexist in the same backfield? These two are such a great 1-2 punch. I mean, at one point, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were on track to both have 1,000 receiving yards. I mean, 11 total touchdowns from Kareem Hunt this past season. He's not the same running back that we saw in Kansas City. That's not going to happen, but he is absolutely going to be a part of this offense. He is absolutely going to be a guy that you can flex every single week. He is going to see plays in the backfield, or he's going to see plays as a pass catcher. He's going to see plays as a runner. He's going to see work in the red zone. He's going to be all over the place. Definitely a guy that you could use as a low-end running back to flex option every single week. Chris Carson. He is a free agent as well. I'm not sure if he comes back to Seattle, though. Only 12 games played this last year. Rashad Penny, former first-round pick. Maybe he's finally ready to step up. If he can stay healthy, Seattle would probably be best served to let Chris Carson walk. Now, if he does come back to Seattle, he's going to probably be right here in this range, if not a little bit higher. Seattle has already said that they highly anticipate running the ball more this season, and if that happens, that means Chris Carson is going to be a part of that. So we'll keep an eye on that this year. Kenyon Drake, we don't know what's going to happen with Kenyon Drake either. Kenyon Drake, also a free agent. A pretty good year this past year. 955 yards on the ground, 10 rushing touchdowns. He was able to overcome some early season difficulties and bounce back and have a good rest of the season. I mean, there was a stint between week 11 and week 14 where he had five. I can't count, apparently. He had 5 total touchdowns in that time frame. So he did very well towards the back half of the season. If Arizona decides that maybe Chase Edmonds can't be the full guy there, then they do spend a little bit of money to try and bring Kenyon Drake back. But, he is going to be 27 this year. He's a guy that played in 15 games this year, finally kind of showed that he could hold a full workload. But maybe they don't really want him to do that. So we'll see what happens going forward with Kenyon Drake and whether or not he resigns in Arizona. At number 20, Clyde EdwardsHelaire. And this is a far cry from some of you who really wanted Clyde EdwardsHelaire is a mid-first round pick last year. Okay? Now listen, I don't want to rub it in too much. Okay? But for those of you that watched early last season and absolutely shredded Jake and I for continuously telling you we are not taking CEH in the first round, and I am not taking him over other proven backs. We said it time and time again. The comments were lit up. People told us for weeks how ridiculous we were. CEH ended up running for 803 yards, ended up having 297 receiving yards. He only gave you 5 total touchdowns. CEH did not have a very good season this year. He didn't. He played in 13 games, so he did miss a few games. But he wasn't the first-round pick that a lot of people thought he was. If you drafted CEH in the first round this year, you got hurt pretty bad. I mean, he had a great first week. Obviously, 138 yards to start off against Houston, a touchdown. Everyone was like, woo! Yeah, we called it. 38, 64. 64, 40. And then you know what? He bounces back week 6, 161 yards. Yeah, CEH, he's the man. We told you all. Here we go. 46, 21, 14, 69, 37, 32, 79. That's what we got from CEH this year. I'm not taking him in the first round. Darrell Williams, Le'Veon Bell, both are free agents. But if you watch CEH work in the red zone, he is not that type of a running back. He is not going to be able to hold those goal line situations. He's dynamic. He can do a lot of things out in the open space. He is not the goal line back that Kansas City is going to want to use on a regular basis, though, and they will be bringing someone else in, whether they re-sign Le'Veon Bell, whether they re-sign Darrell Williams, whether they bring in someone else. CEH will be splitting touches, especially within the red zone. We'll see how the rest of the offseason plays out. CEH obviously could get a big bump for me here moving forward, but heck, a lot of people that thought he was going to be a master in the passing game, well, he really didn't even do that much in the passing game this past season earlier. We'll see what happens with him moving forward. Josh Jacobs, number 18. Here, the thing with Josh Jacobs is, it's kind of one of those frustrating situations, and it's kind of related to even like a Joe Mixon. Okay. And we'll talk about Joe Mixon more in a minute. You already know that. I don't think he's utilized the right way. I think he gets pulled off the field a little too often. I think he gets held back a little too often. I mean, he only had, and let me make sure my math is correct here, 6 games with 20-plus carries this past year. So I don't know if the Las Vegas Raiders look at him as a 20 carry a game type of guy. Now, he did exceed his rushes from the year before, and he did have almost 300 rushing attempts. But again, he gets pulled off the field in certain situations. I don't really love it. He did score 12 touchdowns. He ran for 1,065 yards. Josh Jacobs is going to be a little bit lower in my rankings this year just because of, is he going to get 20 carries a game? Is he going to be a guy that they rely on maybe a little bit more in the passing game? If he is, that will bump him up. But there's some guys that might have a little bit more higher upside than him. But Josh Jacobs next year could end up being one of the best values in your fantasy football league. Ladies and gentlemen, David Montgomery is finally a thing. And hallelujah. Let it rain from the sky, ladies and gentlemen. Put those hands up and praise it with me. David Montgomery finally got the usage he deserved towards the end of the season. And it was absolutely glorious. Starting in week 12, played in week 9, no week 10, no week 11. Week 12 comes out, and after that, absolutely blew it up, ladies and gentlemen. 103, 72, 116, 113, 146, 95, 69. 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 1 touchdown. Added another TD receiving. Had 40 receiving yards, 39, 42, 16, 26, 63, 9 receptions in one game, 5, 4. I mean, the guy finally got the type of workload that we have been waiting for. And just imagine if the Chicago Bears do decide to move on from Mitchell Trubisky and bring in a much better quarterback that is going to keep loaded boxes away from David Montgomery. Ladies and gentlemen, David Montgomery could even go higher than 18. Heck, depending on the offense that they have next year, David Montgomery could be going up as high as about 15, 14, 13 for me. Keep an eye on it, ladies and gentlemen. The breakout happened finally this year, ran for 1,070 yards. If he adds a few more touchdowns next year, the dude is going to be all over the place. Do not sleep on David Montgomery. Antonio Gibson. I got to give a shout out here real quick to my man, Big Mac here at the Fantasy Headliners. You already know, ladies and gentlemen, if you follow us here and if you follow Mac, you know that he was preaching Antonio Gibson way back at the draft, saying, ladies and gentlemen, this is a guy that could make an impact in 2020. I slept a little too long on him myself personally because I thought that Darius Geis was going to be the guy, and then Darius Geis got himself in trouble. So then it ended up being Antonio Gibson because then they also walked away from Adrian Peterson. They went with this guy in a great season, 795 yards. He had 11 touchdowns on the ground. He was a force within the red zone. You knew when they got into the red zone that they were going to try and get the ball to Antonio Gibson. Towards the end of the year, he had an injury there against Pittsburgh in week 13. Didn't play week 14 or 15. And then come back week 17. Or week 16. They tried to keep his workload a little bit on the lower side those last couple of weeks after he got hurt. But Antonio Gibson, I mean, the sky is the ceiling with this guy. The sky is the ceiling. The sky is the limit. Don't mind me, ladies and gentlemen. No, I haven't been drinking. Apparently, I just can't talk right today. The sky's the limit with this guy next year. Really excited to see him. James Robinson. If you follow us over on Patreon and you're a part of our MVP tier, ladies and gentlemen, in July of last year, I wrote an article telling you that James Robinson was a guy that if Leonard Fournette was cut or traded by the Jacksonville Jaguars, you needed to grab James Robinson. And the guy went off for 1,000 yards on the ground, 10 total touchdowns, and was a running back one this past season. That's why it's so important, ladies and gentlemen, if you trust in us and you believe that we can help you win fantasy football championships, subscribing to our Patreon to get all of our access to exclusive content that nobody else has outside of the exclusive Headliner Nation, you're going to get calls like James Robinson, baby. That was a big call for me this year. Probably my best call of all, and I absolutely love it. He falls a little bit lower just because I don't know what Urban Meyer is really going to do. Trevor Lawrence seems like he's going to be the quarterback. They're going to take him number one. Are they going to work on the offensive line a little bit? Are they going to bring in some more playmakers? I'm just being a little bit cautious at that ranking right now because I think there's a few guys could be a little bit higher than him. Cam Akers is one guy that could end up going even higher. He's ranked at number 15 right now. Now that they've added Matthew Stafford, that's going to open up some holes. But this was a guy starting in week 13 when he got 21 carries that finally to the end of the season, Cam Akers really showed why he should be the guy next year in LA. But will he be the guy? Will they still use Darrell Henderson? Will it be a split backfield? We don't know. As of right now, being a little bit cautious with it, going with him at number 15. J.K. Dobbins at number 14. We already know. Mark Ingram out the door. Okay? Mark Ingram is done. Gus Edwards. He's a restricted free agent. Do they bring him back? J.K. Dobbins is about ready to go nuts next year, ladies and gentlemen. He ran for 805 yards and 9 touchdowns this past season. Very quietly, 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns with as much as this team runs the football is 100% in play, considering that J.K. Dobbins didn't even have double-digit carries until week 8 of 2021. Joe Mixon. I'm obviously a lot lower on Joe Mixon heading into next year than I was last year, but ladies and gentlemen, it is still early in the offseason. You have no idea what I could come up with before next year. Listen, Joe Mixon, obviously, he crushed us a little bit to start the season, okay? But there was a few things in play there. If he had played all year, I have no doubt in my mind that he would have been right around a running back one, probably anywhere between that 12 to 7 range. Now, I had him all the way up at 3. I was expecting a lot bigger things from him. He didn't quite hit it to begin the season, but when he went down with his injury before week 7, I mean, he only played weeks 1 through 6. Before he went down with his injury, he was a top 10 running back. So he got you some fantasy points, okay? Yeah, he did have, one big game out there that really kind of helped propel that. But after those first 3 games of the season, you saw those touches start to tick up a little bit. 25 and 24 in week 4 and 5, and then only in week 6, he only had 18, but that's when that injury popped up, was in week 6. So those numbers were starting to creep up a little bit, okay? I'm not going to be as high on him this year, but again, he continues to be a guy that if he gets 20 touches, he can do something with it. Joe Burrow being back, this is going to be a completely different offense, hopefully, that is, Joe Burrow is not going to be slept on. Last year, defenses were trying to stuff the run game, and they were being really easy on the passing game. Joe Burrow did an excellent job, but part of that was because teams were kind of holding back on the pass. They were saying, okay, let's stop the run and we're going to make Joe Burrow beat us. And Joe Burrow did a pretty darn good job of trying to beat people while he was healthy. So we'll see what happens with it. Continue to work on that offensive line, continue to grow. He's still only 24 years old right now, okay? So Joe Mixon, ton of talent, could still end up being a guy that goes even higher. We'll be careful with him this year. I won't be as high, but still love some Joe Mixon. DeAndre Swift. Are they going to use him in an Alvin Kamara type role? I hate making those type of, connections. Just because he's got guys coming over from the New Orleans Saints doesn't automatically make him, an Alvin Kamara type. But Dan Campbell, it seems to me he's going to be one of those guys that wants to play smash mouth, run the ball football. Jared Goff being the quarterback now, that might end up hurting him a little bit. I might drop him back a little bit because of that. The offensive line did take a little bit of a step forward this year. Hopefully they can reinforce that a little bit and get some more consistent play next year. DeAndre Swift in the passing game and on the ground, though, with Adrian Peterson being gone, hopefully Kerryon Johnson not being used as much, he becomes a guy that is a top 10 running back. Miles Sanders was a guy that was really up and down this past year as well. Kind of all over the place, had some big games, had some games where he got pulled off the field, wasn't getting used all the time. Hopefully with the new coaching staff there, they realize the talent that they have with Miles Sanders. Let's jump into the top 10. Austin Eckler, last year when he was on the field, he was still, an amazing talent. The guy can do so much on the football field. Is he going to be a workhorse running back? No, he's not going to be a workhorse running back, but he doesn't need to be a workhorse running back. And again, now that they've got, a different set of coaches in there, hopefully they can get Eckler back around those same targets, same reception that he saw a couple of years ago. Hey, but one thing, in 6 less games, he only ran for about 27 less yards than he did in 2019. So the work on the ground was substantially better this year than it had been. We just got to get him working in the passing game a little bit more, and Justin Herbert obviously is going to do that. Ezekiel Elliott at number 9. Who would have ever thought that he would fall this far? My thing with Ezekiel Elliott is Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott goes back there, then Ezekiel Elliott will go up for me. That's the one thing, though, is they got to get Dak back there, and they got to get that team balanced, and they got to get that offensive line working better. Aaron Jones at number 8. If he's back in Green Bay, he's higher. If he's not, then we'll figure out where he goes from that. But we know Aaron Jones, when he touches a football, can do some crazy things. Jonathan Taylor at number 7. You saw the workload he was getting towards the end of the season. Jonathan Taylor is going to absolutely blow up this coming year. We'll see what happens at the quarterback position. Indy's trying to still make something work. Just missed out on Matthew Stafford. A good top-tier quarterback could really help Jonathan Taylor out. Alvin Kamara at number 6. Nothing against Alvin Kamara at all, except for the fact that Taysom Hill could be a starting quarterback. And in games in which Taysom Hill played last year and started, Alvin Kamara didn't do the best for you. So that's my concern with him, is more inconsistencies moving forward. Saquon Barkley coming back. He'll be ready, raring and ready to go. And when he is, he'll be back up here around the top 5. Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry at 4 and 3. A lot of you are going to give me the argument that you can't put those guys there. They don't catch enough passes. No, I don't care. I don't care if they catch enough passes or not. Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry are 2 of the best running backs in the NFL, especially after contact. These 2 guys put up amazing yards on the ground. They put up the touchdowns. I don't care how many balls they catch. If you want to be safe with your first-round pick and you want to guarantee yourself something, you take Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. They will be the safest running back picks next year. Dalvin Cook at number 2. The only problem I have with Dalvin Cook is just the injury history. Can he stay healthy and on the field? When he does, you know he's going to put up points. Christian McCaffrey is still going to be at number 1 for me right now. This could also change. I almost didn't even put CMC here. I almost put Cook here, and I almost moved CMC back to number 3 behind Derrick Henry. Because the one thing for me is you've got Robbie Anderson, you've got DJ Moore. What are they going to do at the tight end position? Are they going to draft somebody? Is it still going to be Ian Thomas? Do they try to limit his workload a little bit so they don't lose him for an entire season like they did this past year? That's a lot of the things that we're keeping an eye on going forward with Christian McCaffrey. Okay, nothing against him. Absolutely love him. He's number 1 for me right now. If they do something at the quarterback position and it's not Teddy B next year, maybe it does change a little bit for me still. But as of right now, he will still remain number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, my top 30 running back rankings. Again, don't take this too seriously, okay? It's some fun off-season content to start the conversation and just let you know kind of where our head is at currently in our evaluation process. Do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed yet, well, then number 1, hit that subscribe button, become a part of Headliner Nation today, and stick around. Like the video if you appreciate the content, and in the comments below, let me know if there's anyone you'd move around. Is there anybody that you'd move up or down? Is there anybody omitted that you think that you'd rather have in here? Somebody that might drop out? Let me know in the comments below. And for everyone that wants to make a comment about my Joe Mixon call from this year, I'm just going to ignore you. I've moved on. Y'all got to move on too. It was one call, ladies and gentlemen. Get over it. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of the day. I'll see you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Stay safe and stay healthy.